Esmeralda Lopez and Miss Salinas, who will be presenting Adolescents in Crisis. So just how parents can help teens build resilience.
Thank you. I'm Gina Marissa Salinas, and we're here, myself and my coworker, Esmeralda Lopez, are here to present to you guys on Adolescents in Crisis, how parents can help teens build resilience. Next slide. So we're going to start with a little activity, an icebreaker, and we're going to look, kind of take a moment to kind of take a deep breath and ask ourselves, as parents or as people living on this earth today, please answer the question, okay? And that question is, how do you respond in a crisis? For example, do you yell? Do you freeze up? And you can respond in the chat. Do you freeze up? Do you begin to talk really fast? These are just all ways for us to look at how do we as people, as adults, as parents respond in a crisis. So when you think of your child, of your youth, of your adolescent, and how they respond to crisis, how they're coping with their crisis, the question is there a similarity between the adult in the house and the child in the house? The question is there a correlation? Do they relate to one another? The way that a child responds to pressure, being in a bad mood, unexpected events, are the way that they're responding, is this a skill that the child has inherited? Or is it something that they were taught, like a teaching skill that they've learned through the adults in the house? Or is it perhaps a little bit of both? Next slide. So next steps actually is kind of the nuts and bolts, if you will, of our presentation, which is how do we not so much think of the crisis, but before the crisis, if you will, how do we build skills within our kids, within our youth, to help them handle and manage crises? So Esmeralda, Ms. Lopez, if you'd like to present.
Hi, I'm Esmeralda Lopez, clinical social worker, and thank you for attending today. And so I'll talk about why resilience is important. Let's look at the two pictures of the ropes. One of the ropes looks like it's about to break, and the other one looks strong and sturdy. So if we had to carry something really important in our life, which of those ropes would we use? Most of us are going to answer that bottom rope because it looks sturdy. So that's how we want our children to look like going through life. We don't want them about to break with any kind of pressure or stress. So resilient youth, and we're talking about adolescents today. So when they're resilient, they're able to cope with the stressors and challenges of life more easily. They possess those social skills they need to enhance their self-esteem so that it can actually benefit from the friendship. They maintain their resilience when they have supports at home, at school, and in the community. So it affects them in their entire life. They possess the life skills to take into adulthood. And today we'll look a little bit more further on in the presentation about what those look like. They're able to cope with new life obstacles as these new obstacles present themselves in their adult lives. Because once they are 17, 18, in a lot of senses of the law, they're considered adults. And so they're healthier in mind, body, and spirit. And I'm going to switch it back over to Ms. Salinas.
So the question is, what happens when we don't have resilience in our life? When we don't have a strong rope? And one way to look at that is, the word really is regulation. And specifically for this slide, it's dysregulation. When we're unable to manage how we feel, how our thoughts, and the effects that has on our day-to-day life. For example, it could affect crisis and outbursts in our home, the stability and the climate in the household. The crisis and outburst could affect the relationship between the parent and the teen, the relationship between the teen and their siblings, the relationship between the student and the teacher, friendships in general. The youth could find really hard to keep and manage relationships. The teen could find that it affects their learning both at home and at school. And just overall, the youth's ability to get along and thrive in a complex world. Next slide. So the word regulation, self-regulation, more specifically, that's a concept that Duke University Department there of Family and Child Policy has looked at and said, okay, so what is self-regulation? And what is it, and can you define it? And so the way that Duke University has defined it is that self-regulation can be defined as the act of managing thoughts and feelings to enable goal-directed actions and includes a variety of behaviors necessary for success in school, relationships, and the workplace. So again, it's that managing thoughts and feelings. Self-regulation has become recognized for its foundational role in promoting well-being across the lifespan, including educational achievement and physical, emotional, social, and economic health. Further, self-regulation development is dependent on predictable, responsive, and supportive environments. Because caregivers are vital to self-regulation development, teaching adults in caregiving roles to promote self-regulation can be very powerful. So this is one way for us to look at what exactly is self-regulation and how do we as adults promote that within our house. Parents are co-self-regulators. As a parent, we are co-regulators with our teens and young adults. We are actually co-regulators in every act. If you work around people, you know that how they respond, how you then respond to them is going to co-create a different environment. It's either going to escalate or de-escalate. This process is very, very interactive process. Co-regulation happens at each stage of our development and looks different at each stage. Your interactions with your teens change as they age and become more independent and responsive. The supportive process between caring adults, children, youth, and young adults that fosters self-regulation development. Next slide.
So now we're going to look at how do we do this? How do we co-regulate? So we know that prevention is key. And a lot of you may come to this presentation thinking, okay, I'm going to know what to do when my child has a crisis. We're actually going to give you one better. We're going to teach you what to do so that doesn't happen as frequently. And so there's 3 parts to it. We're going to provide warm, responsive relationships. We're going to teach and coach self-regulation skills, and we're going to structure the environment. So there's some groundwork to do. So what do? To provide a warm, responsive relationship with our youth. So we show them our care and affection for them. We show them we respond to them when they let us know verbally and through body language what their needs and wants are. Next slide, please. And when times are stressful, like during this pandemic, we help them feel supported. We are self-aware of what we're communicating through our own words, our facial expressions, our body language, and actions. And I'm going to say, since I'm at schools quite a bit, and I see parents responding to children at the front entrance, I can tell you what I'm hearing from those parents and what I'm seeing is very different. So we've got to be very aware of how we're communicating with our kiddos. We want to show interest in their world, their likes, their dislikes, their dreams, their aspirations. We should know what their favorite color is, what they, who their best friend is, what shows they like, what they like to do on the computer, what gets them going, right? That shows our youth that we have an interest in them. We demonstrate, next slide, an unconditional commitment to them. We love them no matter what they do or say, or even if we're exhausted, angry, or unmotivated. So earlier when I was saying we have to watch what we're saying, because a lot of times what I hear parents say and what I see them do looks very different. So if we look at this slide, sometimes parents look like one of those 4 pictures, and then they're saying, no, honey, it's going to be okay. And their child gets this look like something doesn't make sense to me. So we want to give a message that you're going to be fine. Even if things are difficult, we're in a pandemic right now. So when we're about to send our kids off to school, we want to let them know that things are going to be okay. They might, even if they get sick, we're taking care of them. We will make sure you get the best health care. We're doing everything we can to prevent any kind of illness, and so is the school. So you'll be fine. We're going to take care of things. And those are the messages we want to give to our kids. Next slide, please. So, and continuing to lay that groundwork for co-regulation, we also have to structure our environment. So what does that mean? Our homes need to be physically safe. So especially as a teenager, we do not want to use corporal punishment. We teach, we don't hit. So if there's things that our kiddos are not learning, we need to make sure that we're taking those opportunities to teach our kiddos where those lessons maybe haven't been learned, or they take a longer time to learn particular things. Especially if our children are being served by special education, we know that they may have some areas where they need to build up strength. So we need to do, there will be another slide later where we'll talk a little bit about how to help our youth with special needs. Our homes need to be emotionally safe also. They need to promote a sense of security. We empathize with what they're experiencing. If you want to learn more about empathy, empathy is huge with parenting. Look at Love and Logic. We'll have some resources toward the end. We want to empathize with what they're experiencing and give them power messages that they have the ability to do what they need to do, and we will support them to overcome those challenges they face in life. We provide predictable and consistent routines. They should have a wake time. They should have a sleep time. A lot of our times we do that with our young ones, with our young children. But when they get to be a little older, we kind of think like, oh, they're independent. They know what they're doing. Well, they don't. We still need to set those times. Maybe we need to set it in a range. You know, your sleep time is between 9 and 10, because children need to be in bed between 10 and 2. Those are very reparative times, but most of the time kids are telling me, I don't go to bed till about 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., sometimes 6 a.m. And then they're going to school and they're not ready for the day. So we need to have those predictable and consistent routines. We provide expectations for their behavior. We have to have consequences. We don't have the same consequences when they're 3 years old or 6 years old as when they're like 14 years old or 17 years old, right? So we need to have some expectations for their behavior. We need to have consequences for negative behavior and praise for positive behaviors, especially when we're seeing them make responsible decisions. So next slide. Our discipline needs to be clear and it needs to match the offense. So maybe they don't have, maybe their phones get taken away, something like that. So our consequences should never match our mood or energy level. They should match what the actual behavior was, right? So now how do we lay the groundwork for co-regulation in teaching and coaching? That's another way. So we are not just parents, we guide our children. We model through our actions. So they're watching what we're doing. A lot of times, if you've got a parent, I'm just going to use a cigarette smoking, they're saying, they're smoking and they're saying, I don't want you to smoke. Well, guess what that child is more than likely to do? They may smoke because that's the example they're seeing from their parent. So we model through our actions. We actively seek opportunities to teach our children before they become too dysregulated, our teens, right? So we see when they're starting to look like they're about to go into one of their episodes, right? So we start saying, hold on, hey, let's talk about this. What's going on? What are you feeling right now? So we teach when they're calm, recognizing that their brains are optimized for learning. Our brains are an important factor in learning and gaining wisdom. So we want to help them be able to gain the maximum amount of wisdom, because when we see that they're optimally ready for learning, and we'll teach you that in just a moment. So we give our children hints, or our teens hints and clues as to what they can use for self-regulation. So if you've practiced something, if you've modeled something, when they're in that optimal learning state, then you can say, hey, remember when we practiced this, and say, this is a good time to use it, and then step away and let them work on that. We reinforce the skills as they become more successful at the use of skills. even, excuse me, applauding those close approximations. So they don't get it right, but they get close to it. We say, hey, good job. And then later when they're in the mood to listen, say, you know, this is the part that I think might help you, because we're on that team together with them. We're like we're like coaches. We're teaching, we're supporting. Next slide. We're guiding them towards success, and we're wanting them to become winners at life. That's what I want them to feel. When they feel that, they're going to be ready to be more positive about it. So I'm going to give this over to Miss Salinas.
So working and handling adolescents with special needs when they're in a hard place, in trauma, in stress, and dysregulated. So extra patience is needed, for sure. This can include other supportive adults if needed. Repetition is key. Some youth take longer to learn new skills. Ensure basic needs are met first before teaching or before trying to explain something. You don't want to compete with other factors. So you want to make sure that our youth is not either hungry or tired or overstimulated, have feelings of rejection or lack of support. Looking for triggers. Watch for those triggers. Are they quick to react and give them time to settle in first? For nonverbal youth, talk to the adults around them to find out what's happening to cause the dysregulation. For adolescents, each adolescent is different. Let's remember that some of the adolescents want to be left alone, and others may only want to speak very little, while others, they are very talkative, and that's how they work through their trauma and that's how they work through their emotions. Let's also be aware of the environmental triggers, such as the news, the media, the noise level, and lighting. So those can definitely be a trigger. And some adolescents are more sensitive to change in their routine, especially right now where the schoolwork is constantly changing. Let's ensure as much as possible that routine maintains, that we would maintain the routine as much as we have control over, such as the early bedtime, adequate hydration, time outside, exercise time, quiet time, and a healthy diet.
So how do we know if your adolescent's in a learning ready state? Because we send our kids off to school or they're doing school at home, right? And so we want to make sure that they're learning ready before they start to go into crisis. We have to recognize what's going on in the brain. Well, there's this little thing called the amygdala. If you look at this picture of the amygdala, it's that little green thing. So it's about the size of an almond. And I understand that there's actually two of them. So two little almond shaped things. Those are the fear center of the brain. It puts us in fight or flight. If you've heard of fight or flight, it's basically that part that lets us know, hey, there's danger. We need to either fight, flight, freeze, or appease. So there's actually 4 different responses. We usually get used to just saying the fight or flight, but there's actually 4 responses. Like I said, fight, flight, freeze, or appease. So when the brain is in that state, physiologically, it's unable to learn because it has taken that oxygen from the brain and it's taken it to the body. It sends it to the heart to pump it out to the rest of the body. Because if you need to run, you need to have that oxygen in your legs. If you need to fight, you're going to need that oxygen in your arms. So it's really critical that we get that brain, that fear part of the brain settled down. And this is, so there's something that needs to happen. We know that we're going to need more oxygen. And those kids who've experienced trauma, Ms. Salinas talked about trauma. So kids who've experienced trauma tend to have their amygdalas activated more easily because they've already, somebody comes near them and they might respond with, please don't hit me. And the adult wasn't intending to even harm them, but they're already activated because of their past experiences. So we have to understand that our children sometimes have had experiences that activate them into these states much more easily. So what can we do? We want to preventively teach deep breathing. And so there's a lot of different information out there on how to do deep breathing. And there may be, can't remember right now if I put a video in our resources, but there's probably a video in there. And so what we'll do is just take a deep breath in, and we'll do it with you right now. Take a deep in through your nose. You're going to hold it for about 4 seconds, and you're going to let it out very slowly through your mouth, and you're going to you're going to, even those of you practicing it with me right now, are going to feel a sense of calm, even with one breath. But we always want to do it in about threes. If the first three breathing exercises don't work, you'll give it a couple minutes and then start again. Do another 3 more breathing exercises. And this should start helping them feel calm. When I work with students, I actually have them gauge what their stress level is. They're little, 0 to 3 or 0 to 5. If they're older, 0 to 10, where 10 is a high amount of stress or 5 is a high amount of stress. What do they feel? A lot of times they get 7 or 8. And then when they are able to bring themselves down after those deep breaths, they can say to me, I'm out of 3, 4, 5. Some of them even go down to a 0. And I say, you know, that if you learn how to do this and you self-regulate, then in the future, when you start looking at more difficult, complex things that you have to deal with in the world, you're actually going to be able to do better with that stress, because you've taught yourself how to bring yourself from an 8, 9, 10 down to a 3, 4, 5. Right? And so they won't have to self-medicate. They will not have to take drugs. They will not have to drink alcohol, because oxygen is enough for them, right? And so, and they might need some support with counseling or other things, but we can find healthy ways to take care of our brains and not stay in that fear center. So we want to soothe them. So the older they get, the soothing looks differently. Some of our kiddos may not like the touch. So we may just have to give them a look of, I feel bad that you're experiencing this, that empathy that we use with our kiddos. If you need me, I'm here. Whereas with our younger ones, we may go over and give them a hug and a tight squeeze and say, you know, I love you, I'm here for you. Our older kiddos may not like that, may be very averse to touch. So we teach coping skills. We can say, hey, why don't we walk it off? I can go with you, or go take a little walk around the neighborhood. They can count by an odd number to really engage their brain. Hey, count with me, 3, 6, 9, 12, you know, and because they're engaging their brain. They can use tapping, mindfulness practices, next slide please, and other self-soothing practices. So there's a lot of different things they can do. And now we're going to get to an exciting slide, because I mentioned earlier that adolescents, so we tend to think of our kiddos, once they get older, once they're adolescents and young adults, they don't need help with self-regulation skills. They got it. You know, I'm proud of them. They can do, you know, but they're going to be facing some very difficult things in life. So we want to bust that myth, and parents are critical to the development of self-regulation skills in adolescence and young adulthood, despite their independence. We know that the brain continues to develop until about 26 years of age. So that adult brain hasn't really set in, and it takes longer for young men than it does for the young ladies. So we want to keep encouraging our kiddos to work on those self-regulation skills. And again, we are their co-regulators, so we're also teaching them. So if our skills aren't optimum, their skills are not going to be optimum, because they're looking at a lot of what we're presenting to them. So according to the Duke Center for Child and Family Policy, self-regulation skills continue to develop, but they become more complex and they continue into adulthood. So this is evidenced by, so we may be seeing this in some of our kids. They persist on complex long-term projects, such as applying for college. That's something they do now. I do get a lot of high schoolers who say, Miss, I haven't even done my paperwork, but they're thinking about it. And so sometimes they just need a little bit more encouragement. Go ahead and fill out that paperwork so you may meet those deadlines. But so we see this in young adults practicing problem solving to achieve goals. For example, they manage work and stay in school. So a lot of our youth have to do that, especially right now with this pandemic, or when we experience financial issues in a home. They delay gratification. So a lot of times when they're making those paychecks, they want to go out and do all kinds of fun stuff, but they save money because they know they want to buy a car or they want to buy a home. And then they engage in self-monitoring and self-rewarding progress on goals. They may take themselves out to eat or give themselves some sort of reward for, you know, periodically as they progress on their goals. They guide their behavior based on their future goals and concerns for others. So they may have a little sweetheart, right? And so they may be thinking, wow, some of the things I do now is going to affect someone else, and maybe a child, right? So they start really guiding those behaviors. They make decisions with a broad perspective and a compassion for others and for themselves, managing their frustration and distress effectively. And so they seek help when stress is unmanageable or the situation is dangerous. And if, the next slide, please. And if we don't see them doing these things, then we know that we need to continue helping them maybe with some more basic steps in the self-regulation.
In the future, If self-regulation, our emotions are not dealt with, we may see an increase in our youth. They may withdraw. They may have feelings of anger, aggression, and anxiety. And these behaviors may lead to an increase in substance abuse, bullying or being bullied, fighting, delinquency, or dropping out of school because of their youth's inability to manage their thoughts, their emotions, and get along with others. If in fact these are some of the feelings and behaviors that you're seeing in your youth, currently right now, we do have resources for you. Next page. There's emergency contacts that you can call. There is 911, there is the Dallas ISD Police Department. We have mental health services in Dallas ISD that are both campus-based and clinic-based. 3 major hospitals that have departments for youth are Parkland Children's Medical Center and Hickory Trail Psychiatric Hospital. Next page. Some more resources for parents is the Child Mind Institute, Love and Logic, Understood, and the Harvard Health Publishing.
And so with these particular resources on that previous page, just look at some of those articles. They're really great articles. Don't worry about going back, but just take a look at those, do some searches on their search bar, and just notice that there's a lot of different things that might pertain to what's going on in your life right now. And I would just search it if you have a particular need, and you'd be surprised that there's a lot of information. Now, I may have forgotten to mention this in a previous slide, but, and I did, with the one on the brain, one of the things that I needed to say was you want to gauge your teen's mood, but you want to gauge yours first. So this is a page with some mood meters. So the district is really using that first one, but it's hard to read here, so I kind of put 2 more simpler ones, just so that you'll know, like the red represents angry, the yellow represents happy, the blue represents sad, and the green represents calm. And so you'll want to know how are you feeling? So maybe you and your teen or young adult make a decision that when you're feeling a particular way, this is how I can provide support to you. So maybe they give you an idea of, Mom, today I'm a red. Okay, what do you need as a red? Okay, just don't talk to me, I need some time. Remember that they can have triggers, and so sometimes parents are the biggest trigger for teens and young adults. So we need to find out, how are they feeling, how can we support them? Because remember, we're supportive now. We're not being parents just per se is the way we think of when they're younger. We're there to help guide them as they become adults. So these are really great tools, but gauge yourself first, because if you're not in a great mood, let's say you're in a kind of between angry and sad because something happened, maybe you lost your job and you feel it was for an unfair reason, so you're sort of mourning, but then you're angry, and then your child comes with an issue that they need your help with, and they're also in the same kind of, they're maybe in the red zone. You're probably not going to be the best support. And this is where you maybe get another adult to help you with that. Maybe your spouse or significant other can help you with that, or an aunt and uncle, an older cousin that can kind of help with that. So a couple of different mood meters, feelings and mood meters. Really important to gauge yourself, really important to see how you're doing. Next slide, please. So that you can know if you're even ready, because we don't want to, I know that I can't provide supportive services if I'm not in a good state. So I have to get myself in a good state. I can do a couple of deep breaths, and then I'm ready for the world, right? So, okay, on this slide, I put a lot of different things on here just to help you. Right now we're dealing with COVID, so that seems to be the topic of the hour. This may not be relevant maybe in another year or two, or it could be, but put some things there. What happens, what can I do if my teen doesn't agree on social distancing? That's really hard for teens. It's hard for us, but it's hard for teens when they see their friends. There are a lot about touch and hugging and giving high fives or fist bumps or whatever. So they may have to find some ways to modify that. How can we help them so that they're not using substances during this time, which is, we've noticed that there's been an increase. How do we help them cope with all of this? What are some of the challenges? What are some of the opportunities? So a lot of times when we see challenges, we have to start thinking there's also opportunities. So we don't want to get, because we have to be careful as parents to not look at every problem as this huge, just like it's a mountain I can't climb, but it's a mountain I can climb. And so the way I just said said it both ways, climbing mountains can be a beautiful thing because you get to the top and you get to see a beautiful scene, right? So some of these challenges our kiddos go through, our young adults go through, let's look at them as opportunities. They get to learn and become stronger and get some more skills for their future, right? So here's some more on the right-hand side. There's some coping skills and calming strategies. So A to Z of coping strategies. Tapping's a really kind of cool thing that you can use with your teen. There's a lot of, you could pay for some of the apps that are out there, or just look on YouTube and find some free ones. But it's a lot of, touching the meridian points, doing some things that kind of help to calm the person down. I found something that blogging to cope, an opportunity for teens to blog to help themselves be able to cope with what's going on right now. A cyber guide, this one I absolutely love. It's got a lot of different tools for mental health support. So I highly encourage you to look at that one. You might find an app in there that some of you parents might actually like, and then some of the ones for some that your teens might like, and put it on their phones. I can guarantee you most kids do not let go of their phones. They have that phone connected to them like dear life, right? So put some tools on there that they can use, like, and talk about it and say, hey, let's put it in a special folder. You can put folders on your sort of phone desktop and have it be like, here's your emergency, coping skills or calming strategies that you can use. Here's some more stuff about grief. So there's a site that's got 22 young adult novels to help students process during this pandemic, or just forget about it a little bit. I know that when I was a young lady, for me, reading was my escape, and then it became movies, right? So reading was my escape. I could almost forget whatever was going on in my life at that time, because I just needed a break from it, right? And then I would just feel like, okay, I can deal with all of this. I can deal with it because I get to escape in a novel, and then learn some new things. And maybe you can find, and these look like they might be novels that help. I think they address a lot of mental health type issues. So really good stuff, right? Coping with grief and loss during COVID-19. And I put some things in there for adults because mindfulness is a really important thing. I know now that I'm in my 50s and I've got sons that are in their 30s that I really wish I would have known about mindfulness, about taking the time to just appreciate the moment that you have right now. Sometimes we don't do that, and then time flies and we go, oh my gosh, I regret all that lost time that I really should have. I really wish I would have done this, that, or the other. Well, mindfulness helps us take those breaks during our lives so that we can say, what is it that I really wish I was doing? What is it that, do you remember the dreams and the things that you wanted and hoped for with your family? Now's the time to do it. So mindfulness, this is animated in 3 minutes, how to defeat negative thoughts. So a lot of times parents, when I talk to parents, it's kind of like I feel like a snowball. Like I start out like asking a question and it's kind of contained. And then they start talking to me about everything and it just seems like it just becomes a snowball and it's huge. And it's kind of like, oh no, oh my God, everything in your life seems really negative. But then I try to go through and pull out the really positive things. So defeating that negative thinking is going to be really important for parents, especially when you're looking at your child. You want to see them as winners in life. You're going to equip them with what they need. You're going to do as much as you can to help them become resilient so they self-regulate well, so that they learn how to self-soothe, how to cope, how to do all those things that we want them becoming successful adults, because how we're helping them affects the rest of their life, right? And some kiddos may need some extra support, so we may need to have them in counseling. Miss Salinas went over the SOS page, the one with all the emergency numbers. So sometimes our kids may need some counseling. They need the services from our youth and family. They may have a meltdown at school, and they may need the services from my department. But there are other supports in special education, such as the social workers and the behavior specialist, and counseling as a related service, lots of different things. So don't feel alone. There's a lot of help. Reach out, ask for help. And I'm going to give it back over to Ms. Jancy Arevalo.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Lopez. Thank you, Ms. Salinas. Now I'm going to go over the special education contact information. So if you have any questions or you need some assistance from the social work team, like Ms. Lopez just said, you can always call our number or you can submit a dialogue on Let's Talk. We also have our Twitter, which is where we share a lot of our information.